Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the No Code Podcast, Season 2, Episode 5. This is a big one. This is a critical one because we are talking to the man who's the procuring cause for the No Code Podcast, even coming to light with a big challenge to me back in the summertime. Today, we're talking to Tim Allard, who is a business coach who specializes in a lot of different things: leadership, strategy, personal and professional development. Tim and I have been working together for almost 4 years now through JLL. And Tim and I connected back in midsummer. I was in a little bit of maybe you could call it a COVID rut. Maybe you could call it kind of a personal professional development rut. But one way or another, I needed to find some inspiration outside of work to kind of juice me up a little bit. And he asked me to make a list of stuff I'd like to do outside of work. And one of the things I said was I love podcasts, and I think I could make one. And Tim just laid it down. He said the next time we meet, which is in 2 weeks, have a podcast done. And here we are. So Tim, welcome aboard.
Hey, it's great to be here. Now, how many has there been?
This is number 5 of season 2. There was 10 in season 1, and I slipped a bonus episode in there. So I guess this is number 16 altogether.
Wow. How about that?
Yeah, that's right.
Truth be told, I never expected you to have that podcast done in 2 weeks.
I know you didn't. I think you might have forgot, because on our next call, I was like, oh, by the way, the podcast is done. You were like, oh, really? Okay.
How about that? Right.
And I'm really glad that you pushed me in that direction, and you did. And it's true, because I don't think, I'm one of these guys that maybe I'm a little kind of subject to peer pressure, because, you're growing up and you have your friends and you'll be out somewhere and somebody will say, oh, you won't do that. You won't chug that beer. You won't do this. You won't do that. And you tell me I won't do it, and I may do it. And it sort of felt like a little bit of a challenge to do something that I was completely ill prepared to do. I didn't have a podcast system. I didn't have any kind of background in the technology on how to do it. But I was like, well, I found something that was super easy to use, and I found a guy, my boy Matt Blank, to jump on with me. And I knew, if nothing else, he can't shut his mouth. So I knew I'd have somebody to help me through it, and here we are, and I greatly appreciate it.
Well, truth be told, Tony told me he had a background in radio. A little background in radio.
That's true. Villanova College
Radio. Let me ask you about your background in radio.
That's right. There are some cassette tapes out there somewhere deep in the archives of one of my buddy's houses, I'm sure, that contain probably about 10 to 15 radio episodes of Villanova.
That's great.
Yeah. So anyway, I want to introduce what you do to the listening audience here. So, you're a business coach. We've worked together for a long time. What I think you really do well is, you get the strategy of business. You get, what it takes to be successful in terms of, the bottom line and how to hit your targets. But you also really get the personal part of it, and kind of digging down into who the person is that you're working with, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. And, from my perspective, that's what I think you're great at. And I'd love you to tell everybody in more detail than that, what it is you do and how you got into it.
So, long circuitous route. Got out of college and was working for a company called EDS. Remember old Ross Perot? And
that's right.
Old Ross had a great company called EDS, 155,000 people. I had been involved with the sales and the marketing angle of that business. But Tony, they were a great company, and I stayed there for 12 years, believe it or not. And I knew day one it was not the right company for me. We had to wear the white shirt, the blue or red tie, black belt, black shoes. You didn't even take your suit jacket off when you sat down. So it was really a culture that was, it felt like a suit that was too tight for me. Great experience. They gave you a lot of rope. They gave you a lot of experience doing things that probably they shouldn't have. It was just the nature of their business. But I learned a lot and went on this long journey to figure out what the heck was I going to do when I grew up.
Right.
And literally, I took my sales, marketing, strategy work that I did there, consulting with clients, and at the end, I was getting ready to leave EDS. I'd been working on the MCI account, selling to MCI at the time, and EDS, my company, had been in talks with AT&T and British Telecom and France Telecom and Sprint about doing a merger with them. And well, you might imagine MCI didn't really like that too much. So for about 18 months, it was start the account, finish the account, shut the account down. It was a real emotional roller coaster. So I was like, I'm done. I got to get off this roller coaster. So they had this thing called executive development, this consultancy they were starting. They said, you've been in account operations, sales, marketing, strategy. And, you'd be well-rounded for that. And I didn't really know at the time that I was going to really love it.
Right.
But I found out, I took the job because I was like, well, it'll be a good placeholder for me to find something else to do. And I realized that I really loved it. Mm-hmm. At the same time, EDS sent me to this program at the Sloan Business School up at MIT. And I can't remember the name of the program. It was not like a MBA, but it was like a couple-week program, and exposed me to all these really bright people. And I was like, well, you know what? If they can do that, why can't I do that?
Right.
They were doing business coaching and consulting and things on sustainability, and I was just really juiced and turned on. And I was like, well, that's great. So long story short, while I was at EDS, I literally woke up, went to bed, and thought about this question. What am I going to do when I grow up? Because this is not that much fun.
Yeah.
So ultimately,
let me just interrupt you real quick. The question of what am I going to do when I grow up? I feel like you're almost always answering that through your career, and I think when we first started working together, I remember we were down in DC, and it was probably like the second time we had worked together in person. And you did not only the personality evaluation, but you also got feedback from some of my peers and coworkers and service line leads.
Yeah.
And one thing that came up that I was surprised to hear was that some people felt that I didn't know. It showed that I didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up because I play in a lot of different arenas in JLL. And that was a kind of an interesting thing to hear from an outside perspective, because you're kind of always having that internal dialogue. But with me, it actually showed out there too. So I think before you really find your sweet spot in your career and your life, that's just something that everybody's always thinking about.
It's true, Tony. And, everybody sees us more accurately than we see ourselves.
It's true. Yeah.
Right?
Very true.
So we tell ourselves all kinds of things, and some of them are actually true. But I remember that feedback.
Yeah. I kind of cried in my beer a little bit that night because I thought I was going to get glowing reviews from everyone that knew me. I just thought it was going to be wonderful. And it wasn't bad, but it was, there was some tough stuff in there. And that's, I think, another one of your skills is that you know how to deliver those messages in the right way to say, hey, here's the reality, bud, or at least the perception. And sometimes perception is reality. So, how are you going to take that feedback?
Well, if you get the resistance like you did, where you're like, oh, this stings, usually that sting, there's telling you that there's something there you probably ought to look at.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. If it does sting, it means there's a degree of truth to it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the sting may have been related to the wine and the beer.
That kind of made it better. That usually takes the sting out. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But, backing up a little bit to, obviously that's the kind of stuff that's leading up to you making a decision on how to go forward as really independent rather than, sticking in the big corporate culture. But leading into kind of getting into that big corporate culture, I know you came from some humble beginnings. Was that sort of drilled into your mindset of like, I have to have the stability. I have to have the good job that I know I'm going to have for a long time. Otherwise it could all go away and I'm in the poorhouse.
Yeah. Well, my wife and I, who both worked at EDS, got to know the recruiter who recruited me to DDS. And, at a party about a year later, she goes, well, you know why you're hired, don't you? And I said, well, you needed somebody with a pulse. I don't know. So she said, no, you fit one of Ross's criteria. And I was like, what's that? Well, one of the criteria was you were the first kid in your family to go to college.
Nice.
And that was me. And so it turned out that Ross had kind of he was a wacky guy in many ways, but he had a genius to him when it came to hiring. So he hired people, star athletes, star in academics, first kid to go to college, military people, usually special forces. And if you think about all those people, what do they have in common? They have some level of grit, right?
Yeah.
They have some level of grit, staying power. They got a chip on their shoulder, something.
Yeah.
And that was eye-opening for me, why I was hired.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I'm like one generation removed from kind of that setup where my dad was sort of the first one in the family to go to college for sure.
Yeah.
And to have grown up in, I don't know if you'd call it poverty, but close to poverty. Maybe a small step above that. But I think a lot of that got drilled into me too of, his mindset was survival. It was like, I got to make sure I survive. I can't be poor. I don't want to, live the rest of my life as I grew up. And he definitely drilled that into us kids growing up. And it's part of, I think, what number one set me on a path of hard work and persevering and achieving, but then also in a way sort of held me back creatively, because you get locked into that mindset of like, I got to make sure I can eat, I got to make sure I can survive, and that's it. And anything past that, just don't even think about it, because it's out of your reach. It's out of the realm,
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, this might be helpful for folks. So I said I spent 12 years waking up going, what am I going to do with my life? I'm either pretty dim or there was something blocking me from seeing what it was.
Right.
And so I finally got this book called Zen and the Art of Making a Living by Lawrence Bolt. I'll never forget that. And there was this exercise in there that said, what were the stories about work and money growing up that were in your house? What'd you grow up with stories about that? And I remember, from my parents, you get a job and you hang on to it. And if it was well paying and you wore a white shirt and it had benefits, you hung on even tighter. So here I was 12 years into this career that I didn't really like, clinging to this job I didn't really like.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the calculus was pretty simple to leave. I said, if I go out on my own and it doesn't work out, I can always go find another job I don't like.
Sure.
It was just that simple.
They're abundant. Yeah. If you've laid that foundation, if you've put that hard work in, if you've, created that for yourself, if you make a misstep on a risk that you take, you can go back. I mean, you might not be able to slide right back into exactly what you were doing before, but those kind of things can be corrected for sure.
Well, if you're leaving something for the right reasons and you make a mistake in the next thing, you're still closer to figuring out the next best thing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. I mean, what kind of, you mentioned that book that you read. And I think one thing that's been great in working with you is you've always got a book for me to attack and give you some feedback on. And that's been good for me, because I don't seek that stuff out. I guess it just sort of doesn't come across my radar on a day-to-day basis, right. But some of those suggestions, and one of them was The War of Art that you had me read this summer. Right. And that was an inspiration for me to get started on this podcast too, because I mean, really the message there is, don't hold yourself back. Take the first step, even if you don't know exactly what that is. And sometimes the biggest block in creativity is just yourself. It's your self-doubt, or it's your, just the fear of getting into something that's unknown or uncharted. And, reading that, and I've also mentioned to you before, um, watching the Last Dance Michael Jordan
Right.
documentary over the summer too, really
Right.
kind of inspired me that, for the War of Art, it was taking that first step. For the Last Dance, it was just the notion of being present, which sounds like, oh, you're just thinking basketball highlights, how great Michael Jordan was.
Yeah.
My favorite quote of that whole documentary was towards the end, where they said that Michael had the greatest ability of anyone that they'd ever met to be present, to be in the moment, to not
Mm.
worry about a future failure or a past failure or get
Right.
caught up in any of that. It was just here and now. That's where he was. And,
Yeah.
you can be pretty successful when you have that ability to be present.
Well, so many people just don't take that first step.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's this concept of failure that everybody's consumed with. What if I fail? What if I make a mistake? And what they don't realize is that bumping along through mistakes is the way all successful people make it.
Yep.
And I saw something, I've seen it several times about SpaceX and Elon Musk. He says at SpaceX, failure is always an option. And you
Yeah.
think about how many failure to launch they've had,
Hmm.
and things blowing up and landing and crashing, and they just keep moving. They keep moving forward.
I mean, you can, it's kind of cliche, but you can learn an awful lot more from your failures than your successes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's usually the truth. It's just the way it is. Yeah. So you've definitely helped me kind of adapt my thinking in that way. But why don't you get back to like some of the, you mentioned EDS, you finally make the decision to leave and start your own thing. What is that? What is that first day like? What is that? You
Yeah.
wake up in the morning, that first day after leaving, where's
Yeah.
your head?
So let me set it up. So I've got 10 months worth of savings. I have no clients. I have a 1-year-old child, 2 car payments, a house payment. And like I said, given my burn rate, I had about 10 months worth of savings. And that first day, I can tell you, I had 2 emotions at the same time: the greatest sense of being alive and excitement, and abject terror, all at the same time. And I'm sitting out in my backyard looking at the Blue Ridge Mountains, because our backyard at the time had a view of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And I had a glass of wine and a cigar, and I'm thinking, I'm probably more relaxed now than I've been in 12 years.
Wow.
So there was a little ding, ding, ding. This is probably a sign that this is probably the right thing, at least for now.
Yeah.
And I played this little trick in my mind. You ever hear this old cliche, well, most businesses fail within the first year?
Hmm.
Well, I didn't read on to the next sentence. So I just said, okay, if I make it a year, I'm good. I'm good to go. So I just worked my tail off night and day for about 4 or 5 months until, I had some clients, and the money was coming in. And I remember somebody going, you seem really happy and relaxed. And I said, well, it's not that I don't have problems now, but unlike working for a huge company, my problems all have logical solutions to them now.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Exactly. And
So it
solutions you can
was,
make quickly when you know it's the right thing, instead of having 8 other people sign off on it.
right, right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's huge. Yeah. I think, one thing you mentioned was you had 10 months of savings. And I think for anybody out there looking to make a move, there's no reason you have to go into it. There's almost a notion that you hear about this stuff. It's like, oh, I have to make some big reckless decision. I have to make this big bet on myself. And yeah, you're making a bet on yourself, but there's no reason why you can't do it intelligently over a period of time. I mean, even if you're sitting somewhere in a corporate job today and you say, you know what, I'm not happy. I think I can do this other thing. Well, then plan it out. Put a timeline on paper, put your thoughts down, figure out how much you need in the bank to make it work, like you said, and make the
Yeah,
sacrifices you have to make at home, or whatever. Maybe you got to sell your house and downsize before you even start this thing. Maybe you need to, you know, trade your car in and go with something cheaper, buy a used car. Like there's all these sacrifices you can make to position yourself to take that gamble so that if it doesn't pay off, or just whatever, it just doesn't take off. Maybe you do it for a couple of years and it doesn't get to the heights you want it to, and you want to go back. Then at least you can do that. You don't
You're
have to
going to do
fall
it.
flat on your face.
And you're always better off for having done it.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you realize that you're not going to go to your grave someday going, what if I had just tried it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you try it. It works out. Terrific. If it doesn't work out for whatever reason, or you don't like it, doesn't turn out to be what you wanted it to be, then, do something else. But you're always better. That idea of putting yourself out there. I remember another feeling. I'm here in the big bad world all by myself. If my computer breaks, there's no IT department.
Yeah.
It's all me. And there was
Right.
like I said, there's a lot of freedom in that, and there's a lot of okay, you better get going.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And you mentioned your wife Suzanne being a part of this too. And my last podcast, which I know you listened to, my buddy Ian Faber, his wife Melissa did the same work that he did. And he went and started their company. She joined in a couple years after that to kind of join forces and be not only that support system in home on a personal relationship basis, but to be in the business. So
Yeah.
so when did you two meet, and how did your paths kind of go forward? Curious
Well, we
about
met
that.
in college,
Okay.
actually.
Yeah.
And and she still married me.
Yeah, I know there's some we're going to get into that later, but I think you were the inspiration for some deleted scenes in Animal House, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly, with some of your hijinks.
it was pretty crazy. So I joined a fraternity, the Pi Kappa Alpha House, and it was literally Animal House. I mean, if she hadn't seen it and I had gone on and I married somebody else and I said, "Oh, it was just so crazy," they would have been, "Yeah, I get it. Everybody's crazy." But no, I mean, literally, it was crazy, and there was a lot of aberrant behavior and
Yeah, some silly times for sure. I
silly
can I
times.
can I can relate. My wife and I also met during college, and then I was a couple years ahead of her, so I graduated, and I was debating moving into a house with my buddy Scott Parker, which you met down in DC, the
Yeah, yeah,
restaurateur entrepreneur, and two other guys that were a couple years younger than us. So Scott and I were like 24, and these guys were either like 20 or 21 that we were moving in with, a house of four. My wife, girlfriend at the time, my wife, eventually Jamie, was like, "You're insane if you move into that place, and I promise you it will end badly." And it was one of those things, like when you're young and in the beginning of a relationship, it was like, you know what? Just because you said that, I'm going to do it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I
Right.
did it, and we did not make the 12 months of the lease. We did not go the distance, and she was 1,000% right. There was a
Seemed like
lot
a
of
good idea at the time.
a lot of terrible stuff going on in that house, and she
Right.
was right. And they're usually smarter than us, though. That's
Yeah.
usually how that goes.
Yeah.
But so you meet in college, and
We
but you
meet in
work together
college.
at EDS, right?
Yeah, we meet in
Yeah.
college, and college is in Michigan. And, she had gone to high school in Northern Virginia. And the winters in Michigan, as you know, are long and hard and dark.
Yes.
And she said, "Well, when I graduate, I'm going back to Virginia. If you want to come, that's great, but I'm not staying here." So I tagged along, went back to Virginia, and that's where I got a job at EDS.
Mm-hmm.
Then I got her a job at EDS, and we both worked at EDS for a while, and then got married in 1989. So I've been married a long time.
Yeah.
And we both stayed, and we quit our jobs a day apart at EDS and started this business. And she was in the business like day to day for several years. And then as we had my son Henry, we kind of did division of labor where I was kind of out there with the business and she was with the family, but in the background with the business. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, she started her own design business, Suzanne Allard Design.com, I think it is.
Suzanne Allard Design, 10%
Yeah,
off.
you can
You
find
mentioned
it
the No
there.
Code
Instagram,
podcast.
she's got some great stuff.
Check it
Anyway,
out.
so yeah, she's been a constant for a long time, and I think of her kind of as the Tim Whisperer and I come off the rails, she's talking
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
You get your crazy ideas, and she knows how to poke the right holes in them and all that
Well,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's a force multiplier for me. I don't
Okay.
really send anything out without checking with her, really, not because I need to, but because she just makes my ideas better.
Yeah. No, it's so great to have that in your life. That's not just a sounding board, but somebody that gives you that input that you
Yeah,
really need. And certainly my wife, Jamie, same thing. Anything work wise or whatever that I'm kind of stuck on or debating what to do,
right,
100%, I'll go to her and bounce it off and say, what do you think about this? What
right,
do you
right.
think about my answer to this email? That was tough to come through. And, how do I handle this?
Yeah. She
And I
confirms
usually
you
do what
that
she
you're
tells
not
me to.
insane.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's really great having that. When you have a great partner in your life that can support you through all that.
It is.
Um,
It is.
so in the early stages, in the beginning years, um, were there ever any moments that popped up where it sort of threw some doubt into your mind or threw you for a curveball or, just kind of that new experience of being out on your own where you came across something you didn't anticipate at all?
You
Good or
know,
bad for that matter.
I'll tell you what was really interesting. There were a lot of people that I knew really well going into starting my business.
Right.
And I thought for sure there were several people that I thought would come through for me, make introductions, et cetera, et cetera. And in some cases they didn't. And I was like, holy smokes. I mean, I got these people jobs and, I felt, like I was owed in some way, even though I'm not. But
Right.
anyway, I was surprised. And then there were other people who, I didn't know them that well or didn't think, they would do anything for me. And there were people that came out that they were just like angels. They
Yeah.
introduced me to people who they just got me in front of people. And, you just don't know. At the end of the day, you don't know who's going to come forward or why or when. And so, if you're a service provider, you're out there every day and you provide service the best you can. And, things happen.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. There's definitely some people in my professional circle that, I can rely on uh, to help connect dots whenever I need to. That will do anything for me, and in turn, of course, I'll do whatever I can for them. And it's
Yeah.
that great kind of level of trust and dependability between one another. And then there are some, to your point, and these could even be really close friends or even family members sometimes, where it might just be a discomfort with mixing friendship and business or family and business in some
Yeah.
cases. I definitely come across that sometimes. Um, there's sometimes I get requests for introductions to people really close to me that I know really don't like that when people kind of reach
Right.
out to them and are looking for a job or for a piece of business. And it's tough because you've got to walk that line between friendship and business. And with some people, it's super easy. You just know that kind of anything goes. And with others, it's hard. And that's a
Some
tough thing to
people,
navigate.
I think some people remember you in a time and space when you were a different person,
That's a
and
great
they
point.
can't see you in any other time and space or as a
Mm-hmm.
different, having grown person. And I think we all do that, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's conscious or not, we all do it to some extent.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome point. I hadn't even really thought about it like that, but definitely, I know as I reach out to some people that I might have known back in high school, and now are in professional circles that could benefit me, or I could help them, or whatever. It's sort of like, yeah, you have that. I guess that first impressions last forever type thing. You're like, oh, I remember this guy, fell into the pool at this party and puked all
Right.
over himself. I'm not going to give
Right.
him any business, that guy forever is,
Right.
Tommy McGee, the puker, like,
Right. Right. Now he's running a $5 billion business.
Exactly. And then, yeah, it's strange how that works, but, that's definitely a good point. Um, so you know, you've grown this business into something that's, I think, pretty cool. It's you and Suzanne, and pre-pandemic, you're flying all over the place to do
Right.
in-person things. And, every other time I talked to you, I felt like you were like in an airport or, I'm about to get on a plane, let
Yeah.
me get back to you when I get back. What has this been like, to have that, almost totally altered in the last 12 months, and how have you adapted, in what you're doing?
It's been horribly good. But true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Truth. Because so what I've done in March 13th, I flew home from Tampa. Um, and we were thinking about moving to Tampa and leaving Charlottesville where we were. And, I thought this pandemic thing would be done by the fall at the latest, and
Right. Right.
so as time stretched on, everybody, I think, adapted. We did a lot of things over the phone that we used to do in person. Um, I wanted to move out of Charlottesville. It's a beautiful place, but the airport was small, and I spent an extra 20 days on the road in 2019 because I couldn't get home because there weren't any flights.
Right.
So we started looking at different markets. We looked at Austin and we looked at Tampa, and now we've settled on Nashville. But so, you know, you have to evolve. And as painful as it is to go, okay, well, kind of almost overnight, I can't go out and run strategy sessions. I can't see people in person. And I can't travel to locations to do things with clients. You adapt. And you don't adapt perfectly at first, but over time, I think that a year into it now, we're crazy enough. We've taken on new clients in this year when I just thought as this thing dragged on, that wouldn't happen.
Right.
I just thought my existing clients would hunker down, but it's been a hard time to predict anything, when this thing would end, how people would respond. I mean, who would have known a company like Chick-fil-A would have a banner year, and they would reinvent how fast food is done.
Unbelievable.
Right?
I'm amazed by them.
Right. So it's been tough, and I think it's been tough on everybody, but it's been a lot tougher on people who weren't flexible and adaptable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And I wonder if in your business of leadership coaching and helping people with their professional development, was it a good time for some people to actually hunker down and do that because they didn't have the day-to-day minutia of, bouncing around between meetings and cities and, all the kind of fringe stuff that exists in our lives that we now realize. I know for myself, when we come out of this, I'm going to be way more careful with my time,
Right.
because as much as I want to go back and do a lot of that stuff, I realize now how much of a deterrent that was for me to actually kind of get, really core things done in either my job or developing myself.
They're distractions. They're distractions
Yeah.
from facing the stuff we don't really want to look at because it seems hard, like starting a podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
No way I would have started this thing if I was doing all my networking events and lunches and dinners and coffee meetings. And no, now I have a rhythm where almost every Friday I do this and I plan for it, and I all that time I fill to get ready for it would have been like meeting Joe Schmo for lunch. And I used to take meetings I didn't need to take too. I really was guilty of that. It was because I'm a nice guy and I want to make people happy. And somebody asked me to go do something, I'll usually do it. But looking ahead, I'm like, I am just gonna politely say no to that stuff, or do it as a video call, or do it as a phone call,
Right.
and preserve my time, that I'm not like in my car or sitting at a restaurant waiting for a meal.
I mean, look, I don't want to minimize the pain that restaurateurs and other people have felt. I can't even imagine what it's like to be those people. But on the flip side, whether it's healthcare, telehealth has come 15 years advanced in 12 months.
Yep.
We're going to have advances that we don't enjoy today because we can't.
Yep.
But there's going to be a lot of things, whether it's video technology and healthcare and many other areas, that it's just going to be better at the backside of this.
Yeah. Yeah. We've learned, it's amazing what you can learn and adapt to when you
Right.
have, when you have to, and when you have the time
Right.
to do it. I mean, yeah, you're right. It's none of this is worth the cost. None of this is worth the cost of 500,000 deaths in this country
Right. Right.
and millions of people that have gotten sick and long COVID, people that suffer, with the disease even
Right.
months after they've been infected. But there's a positive side to everything, and there's
Yeah.
a positive side to this. If
Yep.
if if you kind of look at yourself and you're introspective and you've adapted, I mean, we can be better humans coming out of this.
I hope
We,
so.
we really can.
I
I
mean,
hope
there's
we
some
are too.
evidence of it. Not everybody,
Yeah,
but there's some evidence.
not
Yeah,
everyone,
be
not everyone.
hopeful.
So speaking of the lessons that you can learn through tough times, you gave me a list here of some of the things that you've learned about people in business over the years, and I want to
Yeah.
go through this because I think to me, this is like the best part of working with you over these years is
Yeah.
you have a lot of great lessons that you can impart on people. So why don't we run down this? You can do them all, or you can highlight a
Yeah.
few,
Well,
whatever you want to do.
let's see where we go.
All right.
Well, I'm going to start with number 2 first because it's a good segue from what we were talking about. Comfort and complacency are two different sides of the same coin. And the beauty of COVID for those of us whose health and whose business were not too greatly impacted is that it made us get uncomfortable enough to look at the changes that we needed to make and we've been thinking about making. So, really, I think you don't want to be too comfortable. And if you run an organization, you want to be a great place for people to work. But I don't think you want anybody, including the top people, to be too comfortable. I think I've just seen too much evidence that bad things happen when people are comfortable.
I agree completely.
So, probably one of the bigger ones is I put things in 3 buckets:
Mm-hmm.
the things you can control, the things you can influence but not control, and the things you have no control over. So, the things that you can control is a pretty small list. It's everything related to your words, how you spend your time, what you think about, who you associate with, who you choose not to,
Yep.
how you set boundaries. So those things you can control. Things you can influence. I like to use sports analogies. Brady before the Super Bowl, he could watch film, he could work on his throwing motion. Those things might influence the outcome of the game, but they didn't. He didn't have control over the outcome of the game.
Right.
But most of life is out of your control. And so I think the other thing that COVID has done is you really have to focus on the things you can control. And we can't control the fact that we can't all get on airplanes anymore. We can't go see clients, walk the halls, do those things. So you really have to hunker down and go, okay, what is it that I can control? Because when you think about the things you can control, which they were the same things before COVID too, we just tended to not look at them as much.
Right.
You really can be empowered when you focus on what you can control. And you're really disempowering yourself when you try to control all these things that you don't have any control over.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. And I don't think. I think sometimes even when you're so busy just running around, you can do a bad job of even identifying what you can and can't control.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
get pulled in these different directions and you get distracted.
Right. So number 3, people, whether they get beaten down or they don't think about it, I don't know of a single thing that should be considered a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
Literally anything can be wrapped with some differentiated value add. Any business, any service, any product can be differentiated in some way. And so I see too many people defaulting to, well, that can't be done, or we can't do this, or we don't have pricing power. And the truth of the matter is, you always have options to differentiate yourself. And so you're never a commodity, and nor is your product or service.
Yeah, and that's a good point too for, not just say C-suite professionals, but people just getting started in their career too, especially as they go out on the job hunt or they look for opportunities out in the marketplace.
Yeah.
You want to be memorable. You don't want to
Right.
be that candidate that is just, you looked at their resume, maybe you had a conversation with them and you walked away and said, okay, pretty
Yeah.
good. Like you want to be, especially in today's world where the evolution towards social media and everybody has a platform now and everybody has the ability to say what they want to say, that can definitely go bad sometimes, as we've seen.
Right.
But at the same time, it can make you, if you use it the right way, you can show who you are as a person and be memorable. And part of what this podcast is, that's and something I would have been uncomfortable with before, because I would think like, oh, I just have to be like vanilla. I have to be normal. I have to be, I don't want to stand out, but it's okay to stand out. You should try to stand out.
So yeah, and a lot of people go, well, my product is a true commodity, and I go, okay, the purchasing of the product doesn't have to be a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
You can make the purchasing, the selection, the delivery of the commodity a differentiated experience.
Yep.
You can add value in the purchasing and in the delivery. I mean, there's just never a reason to be a commodity.
True.
So a lot of organizations I deal with, in fact, one right now I'm dealing with, it's really pretty cool because we get to design the whole organization kind of from scratch. It's an enterprise that's been around for a long time, but I've been asked to come in and help them refine, in some cases develop and align their core values, vision, mission, operating model, compensation model, and leadership model.
Wow.
And so
it's a big
often,
task right there.
well, there's a lot of it built, but a lot of it misaligned right now.
Right.
And I would say that in every business that I've seen, if you stood back and looked at how they were put together, you realize there's so much loss to misalignment, whether it's in compensation or incentives or lack of consistent core values. There's just a lot of misalignment in businesses, and it just even in really good businesses. And so misalignment is one of these things that I think most people overlook, or they focus on the symptom of misalignment, but not really get to the core of it.
Right.
So misalignment is another one. So to that point, when you're designing an organization, I think you have to look at the fact that technology changes, but human nature doesn't.
Right.
And so you want to be able to put enough structure in the organization to harness the human capital, but not too much that you stifle the innovation and the animal spirits.
Right.
And so enough structure, but not too much.
That's probably a pretty delicate balance to walk, I would imagine, for a lot of organizations.
It is because, we've all been in part of organizations where, it works really well for some people, but it doesn't work so well for other people.
Right.
Or maybe there's a few people that are benefiting disproportionately, and everybody else, they want everybody else to have an owner's mindset, but they aren't owners. So why are they going to have an owner's mindset?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's one of my favorite Mark Twain quotes.
I love this one.
Let's see if I can get this right. It's not what you, this is Mark Twain. It's not what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so.
I love that quote. Do you know what movie this quote appears in the beginning?
No.
The Big Short with Steve Carell about the financial the crash. It's based on Michael Lewis's book.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's shame on me. I'm more of a movie guy than a literary guy, but that was the first time I ever read or saw that quote at the beginning of one of my favorite movies. I love that movie.
Yeah.
Great
well,
film.
It's so true. I mean, we can go into things, you never have perfect information, right?
Yeah.
But it's when you think you have perfect information and you're just so sure that you put all the chips on the table and you go, oops, didn't see that variable coming.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great one. I love that quote too. And actually, if you think about that movie, what that subject is about, that's really what got people into trouble with the housing market and the recession of 08, 09 was that notion that no, housing has to go up forever.
Yeah.
loan goes bad, you just refinance. It's all
Right.
good.
Right.
But you know,
So
a lot of not to grab your time here, but a couple of the notes I see on here about some of the lessons are about people and kind of the quality of character of
yeah.
people. And I know we've talked a lot about that in our work together through JLL, but one of the things you have down here is well, it's kind of two of the different points I think kind of go with one another. Real friends and great partners are treasures.
Yeah.
Agree with that completely. And also, you can't make a good deal with a bad person.
Yeah.
Why
It's
don't you
just
talk about those a little bit?
yeah. So over the years, I've gotten involved with businesses that were partnerships,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's painful to watch people have to unwind a partnership because they have a misalignment of values or motivations, or they're at different stages in their careers, or in some cases, they're just a bad person.
Yeah.
And that, I don't think there's that many bad people out there, but there are some.
Yeah.
And, I'm reminded of the Warren Buffett quote, you can't make a good deal with a bad person. And it's just true. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen so many people get into entanglements because they were not discerning with the people they chose to either partner with or even just do a deal with. And, it winds up, years later, and they're still trying to unwind this tangled mess that keeps them up at night. And it's just not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen it quite a bit too in whether it's in larger organizations or I've had friends of mine that have gone into business with one another and unfortunately the friendship falls apart because of the business relationship or vice versa. And it's probably the hardest thing to navigate in business because we're all individuals. We're all motivated by different things. And, when you say bad people, I agree. I don't think there's a whole lot of bad people out there, but a term you've used in the past when we've worked together is bad actor. And
Yeah.
to me, I kind of like move towards that one a little bit because to me, that doesn't imply that someone's necessarily a bad person at their core, but within their business function or negotiations or however they deal, they tend to be a bad actor. Maybe they're out for themselves and not looking out for the greater
Right.
good,
Right.
whatever it may be. But I think that's something that can really hurt some organizations, especially if those people are in leadership positions. If you have a bad actor in a leadership position, that's impossible to work around.
It leads me to this other quote, how important good friends, real friends, and great partners are.
Mm-hmm.
So, I do a lot with commercial real estate executives,
Yep.
and I've done with the financial institutions as well as global consulting. But the partnerships that I've seen work the best over time are ones where it's not that the partners are doing the same thing, but there's a sense that they're contributing equally,
Yes.
whatever that means, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like in commercial real estate, sometimes you have somebody who is a great rainmaker, but then you have somebody who's doing the back end, executing the deals, and the one can't do more rainmaking if the back end of the deals aren't being done. So that person who's taking all that pain away is really contributing at an equal level. The other thing too with that is the ones that I've seen to your bad actors, but not necessarily bad people. Those long-term partnerships where people split 50-50. I tell you where it's the person who just wants to get that extra nickel all the time,
Yeah.
it just causes resentment
Yep.
over time, and you just see these things going, that's not going to last long.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's the partnership stuff. It's always tough. I think probably more of them don't work out than do. But
Yeah,
sometimes you see somebody get it right, and if they understand, it's maybe in a way it's kind of like a marriage. Like you're gonna have your ups and your downs. You're gonna have
right.
your times where you're gonna sit there and say, "I'm pulling more weight than the other person," or the other person's pulling more weight than you, and you kind of feel like a slouch, like you're not contributing. But if you're on the same wavelength and you're working towards the same goals, a lot of times that stuff is just going to come out in the wash over years. And then you get to a point where you've done it so long, you realize that, and you don't get bent out of shape about those things. And you
Right.
just, try to continue to grow and evolve and do better. And, some of them, the ones that, it's funny, the more of them don't work than do, but the ones that do can sometimes just be incredible partnerships.
Yeah.
You know?
So, it's interesting, Tony. You and I had a conversation recently about, an engagement you were looking at getting involved in.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was thinking at the time, just be careful.
Yeah.
Just be careful. You got to get to know these people.
Yeah, definitely. No, and that one was, it didn't come to be, and you'll never know if it would have worked out or if it wouldn't have. But having some separation from it, I definitely kind of see some of the danger areas that you saw that I didn't want to see at the time that it was happening. So I think that's another thing you're really good at as a coach, is that to have that objectivity, and not necessarily be emotionally invested in something that's going on, I think can be a huge help. And I was going to ask you about this, and maybe this is kind of like the last question here that I had anyway. But I've done therapy before. I'm actually currently doing it right now every couple of weeks. It's always been something I felt helps me, to have somebody outside of my family, somebody outside of my friends that I can talk to, that the person cares, I'm sure, but they're not like 100% emotionally invested in what I'm going through or my happiness or whatever.
Right.
Do you find yourself to be, in a way, I guess maybe like a business therapist, or part of what you do kind of falls into that category of third party trusted advisor? You develop friendly relationships with your clients, which is maybe where it's a little bit different than a therapist, because a good therapist is not going to do that.
Right.
Do you think of yourself in that way at all?
I don't. Therapists and therapy is an industry that hopefully you go to school for, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have any training in that area. I have a lot of life experience.
Mm-hmm.
I do think the business coaching is therapeutic sometimes,
Yeah.
but I don't think of myself as doing therapy. I don't know if that answers it or not, but
No, it does. And I guess maybe what I think of it is a different. It's in a different way. You're not necessarily having people pour their heart and soul and their guts out to you about their personal lives, but you do have them pour that out about their business lives.
yeah,
Which you're at work usually more often than you're at home. So sometimes that can be as well. It can be more stressful. It can be as important sometimes as what's going on at home.
I have recommended people that I could help them with their business
Mm-hmm.
and I could support them in what a therapist would share with them. But I've always been very careful to draw that line.
Right. Right.
And I have recommended people consider therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because based on some of the things they were telling me, I knew it was outside of my league.
Exactly. No, that makes a lot of sense, and I would never suggest that you would dabble in that, because that's like you said, you need some training on that. You need to know the right things to say to people that may
Right.
be dealing with an issue. But look, we always encounter people in business that you look at that person and be like, wow, maybe they should go to talk to somebody to work on
Yeah.
some of these blind spots or some of these behaviors that can be troubling. Whether it's somebody being passive aggressive, or somebody that's making staff uncomfortable by the things they say in meetings, like whatever it may be. We all see it. It exists in the world for sure.
Well, I'll tell you, we were talking about good people versus bad actors. My sense is that most of the behavior that we see that's not good is from good people who are struggling, usually because of something they fear will or will not happen,
Yeah.
is when I see people push to the wall and they don't have enough time, capital behind them, or money in the bank, and they do things that uh, hurt their long-term sustainability for a short-term potential gain, and they make decisions based out of short-term fear. It looks like
fear and insecurity, I think, are two things that definitely inhibit somebody from doing the right things at work and being a good leader. I've seen it many times. You know, sometimes you just need that trust and belief in yourself, and to not be afraid to make a mistake. It can be hard for some people, for sure.
Yeah, because we're all going to make those mistakes.
We all do every
That's
day.
right.
Every day we make a mistake, a couple times at least.
Yeah.
But listen, Tim, I'm super thankful that you came on today.
Yeah, man.
I'm really thankful to have you as a friend and as a colleague and somebody that I've been able to work with over the years. If anybody out there listening is thinking about getting some business coaching, leadership coaching, whatever it may be, I highly suggest you reach out to Tim. What's the website, Tim?
Tim@timjallard.com.
Tim@timjallard.com. You
Little
can email him.
shameless advertisement there.
Follow him on LinkedIn. He's got good blog posts. Check
Great
out his
content out
website.
there.
That's right. And check out this podcast for sure. And I love the work that you do. I'm super thankful for what you've given me over the years, and looking forward to some good in-person hangs when this is behind us a little bit.
Almost there. We're
gonna get there. I'm gonna come down to Nashville because now you're in Nashville, and I've never been to Nashville, and I've heard good things. Yeah,
that's a lot of fun. You thought Charlottesville was fun?
This will be better.
This place is all around fun.
We'll go light up the town.
We'll do it. All right, take care.
All right, Tim. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening.